Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. What we're going to be going over this week is mostly client-side routing in React. Now, we've been talking about routing in various fashions throughout this class for traditional web browsing. That's going to be that I've got links to other pages, right? So you have your typical web directory. You go to your website, you click a link that's pointing you to another file somewhere in that directory or externally too, right? Um, in terms of routing for applications like Rails or Flask, we would set up various routes. So like in Flask, we'd have a slash contact or slash home or just slash for the default page, and we were routing users there. When we looked at Rails, we had our routes set up kind of painfully at times, I'm sure for all of you. But again, we're just defining how to translate that URI or basically our URL that we are navigating to. How do we route people around our various pages of our application? This is pretty clear in the server-side paradigm, right? So we are just loading in this resource. Okay, that's one way that we can definitely accomplish routing. The other thing we can do is client-side routing. And this is one where basically we are going to be loading things in from the server, either all at once or kind of lazily loading them in later on, which I've got some demos for. But everything is already in place. We don't need the server for anything else unless we need more later on. So that's kind of the goal here today. And with applications like React or Angular or Vue, this is something that's pretty common. Why would you do this? In terms of speed or performance, it could be a good thing, right? Everything is just on the user's device, whether it's mobile or desktop or something like that. And then they can just very quickly go between pages. And then if they need more data, we just load it in later on. Um, Typically, you will see this in single page applications. So I know we talked about that probably a few weeks back, but just as a refresher, a single page application is one of the kind of current trends, at least in the internet, for just having one page. And it could be kind of broken up between links or things like that, but it's just presented as one page, and then either the user scrolls forever, content loads in, or we just do a very quick swap of whatever content's being shown. So just as a bit of a heads up, this week is very demo heavy. I've got some demos for lazy loading, for single page applications, for infinite scrolling, all of these kind of current trends that we see, at least in today's internet. And I'm sure in the future, more interesting ways to browse are going to pop up too. So with that, let's talk client-side routing. So what we're really doing here is nothing new in terms of the web. There is nothing crazy about just loading in all of your HTML content and then dynamically showing or hiding it, right? So when you hopefully all did your assignment with that data grid, and I said, give me 5 rows with a delete button. And I'm sure that most of you implemented this with an onClick event for that delete button that will either hide that row or it will remove it from the DOM or something like that. And we are just basically dynamic, well, not on the client side, we are hiding content in some way. The idea here with this type of routing is that we are showing or hiding content based on the URL bar. Now, we are going to update the URL bar so that things can be bookmarked so that we can use the history of our pages, but it's still going to be just everything is already there. Um, Really, this is DOM manipulation. So if you click, let me go to my React app here just to kind of show you. So here I've got our kind of work in progress single page application demo that we'll be playing with this week. I'm at my home page, so I click about and I go to slash about. I go to contact slash contact, but everything, we didn't do a page refresh. Now, the point of the demo, I've got lazy loading in here, so we see kind of information popping in. Interesting, I'm getting blocked from infinite space now, but that's an infinite scrolling thing. I was doing a whole bunch of demos, so I'm guessing my IP got blocked. But basically, the idea is that everything is already in place. So if we look at our, I'm going to go ahead and refresh, we see some data popping in here. Now, yes, we are, this is probably a bad example here. Okay, now that everything is loaded in, sorry, I did a bunch of demos for bringing in content after. Basically, this should all already be there if you're doing the most basic single page application. So now that I've loaded all of this in, we are not seeing any new network requests happening. Everything is already local. What I was talking about was if I do a hard refresh, lazy load, pop in, lazy load, pop in. Now everything is already there. So we could very easily accomplish this with, oh, I'm going to click this link. Let's do a document.getElementById homepage div.hide about div.show or something like that, right? But we have a little bit more to it with React. So we are basically going to look at what link is being clicked. We're going to update the URL bar with that, and we are going to dynamically show and hide things. Now, the typical workflow with this, which is, again, what we all know and love, I want to request some resource or some page. So I'm going to google.com. I'm going to request that page. The server is then going to respond with that HTML content. We're going to see it in the browser. And then now when I want to navigate elsewhere, I'm going to click something, I'm going to interact, I'm going to do something that's a new request response interaction, right? So think of that kind of back and forth that we have with our various HTTP requests. With SPA, I'm going to request a page. The server is going to bring in everything that I need at that point, and then I'm only going to show what the user is asking for. When I click something, now the onus is on the browser, on the client side, to figure out what I want. Is it a new image? Is it a new page? Is it a new something? And then we are either going to dynamically show/hide things or bring in additional information as we need. Now, what we're going to be doing this week is playing with React Router quite a bit. And as the caveat, React Router, and you're going to probably hear this in every demo, hopefully with cursing either blurred or cut out, but React Router has gone through a significant revision recently. React Router 6 is way, way, way different than 5, which a lot of tutorials on the web are built for 5. They're not going to work in 6. So make sure that if you are doing any tutorials that are not kind of put out here by me, that you make sure it's for the current version. So just to kind of walk you through what something like this would look like at its most basic, and this is from our open source textbook that we're using. I've got my app homepage, right? So I could very easily do a conditional comparison. So this isn't using React Router, this simple example. So if our current URL is /home, where we have some way to get current URL, basically we're looking at what the current location is. If that is /home, show me my homepage component. If we have found the about page, or we basically somehow click the about, render the about page, then we have one kind of easily client rendered application. What this is going to look like in React Router is, well, I've updated this for lazy loading, so it looks a bit more complicated than it needs to be right now. But we're going to have a bunch of links. Let me make this touch bigger here. Away. So we're going to have a bunch of links. So these aren't hrefs anymore. These are React Router links. I'm going to say where on the site this is routing to, and then I'm going to have a way to handle the routes. So let's see if I can undo this without breaking everything really quickly here. Let me just get rid of this super, super fast. Because we built up basically a configuration object for lazy loading. So I'm going to get rid of all this, just undo so I don't break anything here. So we want all of that in. Don't want lazy, don't want suspense. So basic page. Okay, so I refresh my React app, and here we go. So our various pages, we don't have anything loading in lazily at this point. But what we're defining is here are all of our routes. So if we are at home, render the home component. If we are on the about, render the about component. If we want to go to contact, render the contact component. How is that route defined? Well, I clicked a link that specified contact. And there can be, a bit more to this as well. So kind of the point is we have a way to handle routing without talking to the server. Ideally, that's helpful for mobile users, for people where data consumption might be an issue. There are some things about the server um, not having to be constantly queried for new data is a possibility too, but basically just ideally it makes life easier for all of us in terms of client-side user experience. So just one last picture here before we start going into demo world. This is just a visualization of what I talked about here. Basically, we don't need to pull everything down at once. So again, our traditional life cycle, client request, server response, client request, server response, SPA, client request, everything that we need. If we need more, let's make an AJAX call, which is that client-side way of talking to a server without a request. Server sends a JSON packet back or XML or whatever it's packaging up, and then the client's application needs to update based on that received data. Okay, so in terms of this week, we are basically going to be using React Router to handle this. We could use other technologies to do that. I'm sure there are a multitude of packages out there. Again, we could do this with raw jQuery or JavaScript if we wanted, but React makes this a little bit more seamless. So enough of the high-level stuff. We'll move into some demos. I will show you some different things that we can do with single-page applications, and hopefully it's interesting to all of you. Bye, everybody.